Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave and
Mackie
on WZZR, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on www.revolution.radio, where it's more than just radio. So jump into the chat room if you can. This is show number 383.
380 and 300. So I got that right.
You did get that right. It's on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen from anywhere, or just not anywhere, but maybe in the comfort of your own home, using a Grace tabletop digital radio. If you missed Solaris' show, well, don't worry about that, because you can jump into the archives to catch it. She had Dr. Heather Lynn, and they were talking about evil archaeology. Extraordinary.
Evil!
Great show. And in the end of that, I caught the end, and they were talking about Tartaria. And that is a whole topic, and Mackie and I are going to do a show on that. But just letting you know, it's a real thing. So, just saying. So don't forget, this is the most important part. It only costs $5.95 Australian dollars, AUD, which the fluctuation of the exchange rates may change so significantly soon that, it'll be $10 billion Australian to... No, it would be the other way around. It'll be like 0.1%. Anyway, it doesn't cost very much at all. It's like a triple coffee cost, to me anyway, to access the Freedom Slips archives. And in the archives, you've got access to not only our show or Solaris' show, who precedes ours, but you've got access to all of the host shows. All of them. Every last one of them. If there's a show on this station, yeah, the archives are there. And so, it's a way of contributing to the station as well. And the more people who contribute, the less people have to donate independently. So, yeah, you're getting something. And that's pretty good. There's also millions of other things. Well, maybe not millions. There's a ton. There's an S-ton. Okay, that's a unit of measure.
Million!
There's an S-ton of things out there. Just go to freedomslips.com and check out all of the offers. Because, you can buy, an MP3 proof, MP3 drive. No, sorry, so USB stick, MP3. Where was I? You can't put any MP3s on it. And a magnetic pulse proof thumb drive. There's so many other things. Like Hawk has now set into bumpers. There's his woodworking. You should see. He's a phenomenal woodworker. I'd call him a master craftsman. With the stuff that he's creating, and you can just buy some of that. Just do that, and it's good. Now, Mackie and I live in the country underneath the world, not Antarctica, but Australia. And then if you're a true conspiracy theorist, you become aware that Australia doesn't exist. And we're
It's not a real country, everybody. This is Mackie telling you the truth.
No, Dave, don't hurt me.
Turn the key, sir. You're supposed to. We're just supposed to be actors. Maybe from the Crisis Actor website, because Australia isn't a real country. Don't worry about that. But this land that we're on, the real Australia, is about the size of a thimble. We're both all sharing it. We're, if I'm not in the water, he's on land, or blah blah blah. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. Where I live, it's the Darkinjung. And where Mackie lives, it's the
Rock people.
Yes. And we pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. And I'm going to tell you that this isn't just lip service that we're providing here right now. You have to realize that for at least 80,000 years, they looked after this land in a way that when we arrived, it to us looked like it was untouched. It wasn't untouched, and they had their own methods of farming and looking after the the wildlife, also the flora and fauna, if you want to put it that way. They had their own way of doing that, and at the the flimsiest glimpse of this country when it was settled by white people, they saw really none of that. Except, I have to tell you, Canterbury Road was the pathway that the Aboriginals had cut through the land to go from one place to another. If you didn't know that, Meki, that's something really interesting. And that these lands beneath the buildings and the roads and the concrete and everything that we've built are lands that have had stories passed down for at least 240,000 generations. It's a lot. It needs to be recognised, and that's why we say it. And where we live, it's very important. And we also say future because while we're talking to you right now and it's live, a recording may be heard in the future, and we'd like to also represent ourselves in that time period as well. Because, Meki, just scientists have concluded that the future and the present are exactly the same thing.
Mathematically speaking, they are.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct.
So, just saying, as I'm talking, we're going into the future. We're time travelers. I think we all are.
So sorry, that's not a new thing. Sorry,
a new thing.
People are becoming aware of it, but as far
that's right.
as concerned, there's no difference between past, future, and present. A complete figment of our mind.
That's absolutely. And I keep telling people it's Einstein's time in a box, so they all exist. Each and every one of them. Anyway, Meki, it's been a while.
Yes.
It's been a week.
Yes.
How are you?
Yes.
You good?
I am fantabulous. Sure, why not? What else could I be?
Sure,
Right?
why not?
I am. Why? Right? No, look, it's okay. Everything is good. Can't complain. Really cannot complain. Just realized how fortunate you are when you go and donate some toys down at the local St. Vinny's. St. Vinny's, for our international listeners, is like a charitable organization and non-for-profit that essentially takes donations of clothes and furniture, toys, well, whatever you don't want, as long as it's still clean and usable, right? And in good working order, and then on sells it or gives it, donates it themselves to people less fortunate than most of us. And yeah, so toys, my kids' toys, we donated a whole bunch of them, and over the years you don't realize how much you accumulate.
Boy.
No, I'm good, and it's true, right? It's a thing. But no, I feel blessed. I'm lucky, and we're fairly lucky in Australia in general. So no, I can't complain, Dave. I really cannot. It's cold though. I tell you what, it's cold. Why is it so cold? I hate cold. Why do we have to cold?
Good morning, campus. It's cold outside today. That's my
cold out there every day.
Every day. You got it. That's good.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
my Groundhog Day. I just love that. Put your little hand in mine. So it's very funny. So I was not spring cleaning. I was mid-winter cleaning the glass on my deck with a hose and a brush and having to clean that. That was just great. Wearing, the traditional cleaning clothing of, board shorts and a t-shirt in winter. Don't ask. It's all good. We're having a Japanese exchange student stay with us after the school holidays ceases. They go a week away, maybe 9 days away, and that's going to be really cool. My daughter's learning Japanese, and she's in high school. And, this would be middle school for Americans. This is year 7. So we have, 1 to 6 is primary school, and our high school starts from 7 to 12. And I understand because I went to school in California, high school, and yeah, it's not just, freshman, junior, senior. It's not just the last 3 years. Anyway, having said that, Meki, I wanted to quickly just point out to everyone, if you're not aware of the crazy quantity of earthquakes that are coming out of the area southeast of inside California itself. The Ridge Crest, you might know it as the Ridge Crest area. It's a very large area, 60 miles by 60 miles, and the quakes are about 40 miles, up to 40 miles deep. That's actually now been discovered as a new caldera, a dormant one though, and the quantity of quakes, I want to just let you know, is so crazy. So this week it reached a peak of 9,000, and now it's back to 8,000, 8,500. So that's a weekly quantity. So it peaked, I think, on Thursday or Friday, and now it's settling off a little, but still not going away. There's still tons and tons of quakes. Now, it looks like the big ones, the 6.4 and the 7.1, gave way to a lot of subsidence, possibly within the caldera. Don't know what it means yet. People are saying, oh, it's not going to blow up. Well, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. We should still watch and act. That's the status we're in. See what happens. But it's sort of making its way down. The small quakes of 2, 3, and 4 are making their way down from that area to the San Andreas on the west coast. And if it was to be able to relieve some pressure, but suddenly on the San Andreas, we've seen some shifts of 10 meters in the past on the San Andreas, and that's been a very large quake with a great loss of life and destruction of property. Let's hope that nothing happens. When everyone says that we're due for the big one there, but we'll just have to wait and see. I just want people to realise, Meki, just how significant the quantity of quakes are. Oh yeah. And it currently exceeds, as a weekly total, those from the Mauna Loa volcano outburst late last year.
Yep.
It's greater than that quantity, and they were having quakes round the clock, and we were concerned maybe that the Helena slump would fail because of the amount of shifting of material. But maybe all of these small quakes are really just magma, maybe filling the magma chamber. Maybe it finally broke through. Maybe it's doing something, but we don't know what that is. I'm no expert, right?
Right. Look, I completely agree, and we have to understand. You haven't got a PhD, so shut up. But actually, I've got two stories. One that I want to share with our esteemed listenership, just out of interest. And again, I'd like to shout out to Solaris. Thank you very much for always having a nice word to say just before we start our show. Mm-hmm. She's a classy lady, and you should really take your time to listen to her show. And hey, download her book or documentary if you can. Interesting, really interesting stuff. But look, there's a couple of stories that I have that broke this week. One is sort of related to what Dave just spoke about. Sort of, not really, but it's sort of in the same way. But A68. Oh, Mickey, what is an A68? Well, an A68, or the A68, is the world's biggest iceberg, and it's in motion. It's on the move.
Where is it going?
Where is it going? Indeed, it's been 2 years since it broke free from Antarctica, right?
Oh, that's the square.
And it has now. It's not really, sort of. It has broken free. No, much bigger than that one. Much bigger than that one. It has broken free, and now it's actually 160 kilometers long. Okay, 160 kilometers long. The one that broke off, the square one, was somewhat smaller, significantly smaller. Right?
Right, okay.
But this piece of this chunk of ice is 160 kilometers long.
Goodness.
Yeah, and it's just got stuck on a section of a shallow seafloor. Right, it's now pretty much the world's biggest ice island.
Ooh, nice.
Okay, and it weighs around 1 trillion tons. Yeah, and it's actually quite fast for its size. I just wanted to share it with everybody. So that's
they should tow it up into Sydney Harbour and melt it for the water.
Dude, they should tow it somewhere into the desert. Absolutely, it's like I said, 160 kilometers long and 200 meters thick.
Mm-hmm.
You can make a lot of gin and tonics with that, I tell you.
Well,
No, but
that
that's
would fix
one,
the
right?
Murray-Darling problem.
Right? I hear you. Now, look, it's massive. It really is gigantic. But it's moving. Okay, and so just wanted to make everybody aware that is a thing that is happening. It's a massive thing. In 2 years, yes, it broke away 2 years ago, but it's still out there. Now, the other thing, this is it might be more interesting to you folk. These are the oldest that have been found, and this particular one is the story of a piece of skull that was found in Greece. A piece of skull that was found in Greece just recently, and it's the oldest human fossil outside of Africa. Outside of Africa, okay, and it could rewrite human history in that, because previously people thought, the migrations didn't happen, and there were no contemporaries of the Neanderthals in Europe, and there's a whole bunch of stuff, and what the scientist says, the lead scientist Carvati, Dr. Carvati, Katerina Harvati, I should say. She said, our results indicate that an early dispersal of Homo sapiens out of Africa occurred earlier than previously believed, before 200,000 years ago. She goes on to say, we are seeing evidence for human dispersals that are not just limited to one major exodus out of Africa. Now, it's significant because obviously we are pushing back further and further the timelines of Homo sapien itself, as well as the time we think they started moving about. Okay, it's going to go back further and further, and that's really significant to understand. Now, the interesting thing here is this: there are two voices of dissent I would like to quote here, which are lovely. Okay, so here. One is this, and you will hear my problem with that in a second. Juan Luis Arzuaga, a Spanish paleoanthropologist, said he was not convinced the skull was from an early modern human. The fossil is too fragmentary and incomplete for such a strong claim, he said. In science, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proofs. No, they require the exact same proof as any other claim, because proof is proof. But this is the thing though, Dave. What does extraordinary proof actually consist of? If I make a wild claim about something, right? There's a spaghetti monster in the sky, and his name is Rupert.
Oh, I love that comment of yours, yeah.
all hail Rupert. And transmission. But then all I have to do is bring Rupert in and introduce him to everybody. Hey, this is Rupert, the flying spaghetti monster in the sky. That's the evidence that's required. That's the proof. The extraordinary proof would be to bring Rupert and all of his family with him, and maybe have a live vivisection of Rupert, and then we serve him with some Parmesan cheese, But this is every claim that you make. I don't care. There you go. That's nice. Every claim you make, any claim you make in the world of science or anywhere else for that matter, requires the exact same amount of proof as any other claim. I hate it when people say extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof.
Yeah, they so
then yeah,
they so
yeah, exactly. So
yeah, go ahead.
Go on.
No.
You wanna go? All right. So he also says this fossil is too fragmentary and incomplete for such a strong claim. So so remember that. And then John Hawkes, a paleontologist at the University of Wisconsin, also said, can we really use a small part of the skull like this to recognize our species? So two paleontologists and one paleoanthropologist say, it's not enough. It's not enough evidence to establish the identification as to be a Homo sapiens fragment. We have less, in some instances, to go on for the accepted identification,
or half a jawbone.
Right?
Yep,
half a jawbone. And Lucy, famously, that was found by the Leakeys. That's exactly the kind of house of cards we've built for ourselves. So if that's the standard, which I have no problem with, by the way, at all, none, zero, then we need to hold everybody up to the same standard. And we need to look at the foundation of the house of cards that these people have built their careers upon, right? I mean, it's easy to throw stones once you're staying on a house that you think has got a solid foundation, but it doesn't. Your house does not have a solid foundation, okay? Now, So what the current theory is that early human pioneers reached Europe, and then they died out there. They say, if they came before 200,000 years, and then the Neanderthals themselves were replaced by an influx of Homo sapiens about 40,000 years ago. So Homo sapiens came into Europe officially 40,000 years ago. We know that is probably not true now, okay? But also, I don't think that Neanderthal was replaced with Homo sapiens. I think there was simply a matter of interbreeding. I think that Homo sapiens interbred and outbred distinct Neanderthal populations. That's my suspicion.
A little bit of fermented fruit, and everything looks good, right? That's what I'm saying.
Great equalizer.
So
it's sexy juice. I call it sexy juice.
So I think that I like this story still, because it didn't say we found them 8 million years ago. It just still lines up to the Sumerian tales of creation.
Yep.
Right? It still lines up to... I'd be a little bit disappointed if it was, pre then, and maybe I wouldn't believe that it was Homo sapiens then, but I would, hominid are all alike, I'd be okay with it. And I think that those people who are, locked themselves in a, tenure at some university or, the Smithsonian or whoever they are, wherever they are, smoking cigars and drinking port and looking at their large library of their own work on the wall and thinking there's no change that's ever going to ever happen again, right? There's far out. I mean, the discoveries that we come across which rewrite history is a constant thing. They weren't just the ones that, broke the envelope and now we're all happy now that they've existed in history. It does make a big change. It's a big difference, and you can't close the book. It's open until either the Anunnaki return and tell us we're all a bunch of idiots, right?
Yeah.
That we've so got it wrong. They go, show us your history book. Why is there none of the Sumerian text in here? Right? We told them to write it down. Did you get the things? It's like, did you find the microdot? In a captain's message. You know what I'm saying? It's a Red Dwarf joke.
Yeah.
Sure I did. Oh, yeah, you worked it out. Yeah.
We said to write it down, but it's not write it down. Come on.
No, it's quite a funny thing. So, Mekhi, I'm looking at Iran, the issues in Iran now, with. I have to tell you something else. Petrol prices, fuel prices went up, 50 cents a litre. If no one took any notice of it, I got it. I got my fuel for like $1.35, and I drive like 98 octane, and it went up to $1.85. And my partner, she said, you better get fuel today or tomorrow. I think tomorrow's the last day, she said, before it goes back up again. I said, what do you mean it goes back up? She goes, it's going to be crazy expensive. Now, there's no single justification for it going up 50 cents a litre. I mean, that's insanity when you think about it, right? It really is. There's no production costs. There's no loss of source material. There isn't a reduction in shipping, and there's no increased shipping costs. There's nothing that makes it a landed cost any more expensive than it did, the few days prior at all. So where's all the costs coming from? Just because they can gouge us as much as they want. It's school holidays, Mekhi.
Well, but not only that. The CEO needs to buy himself a bigger yacht. You're very unreasonable, Dave. You're very unreasonable.
Oh,
you used to be cool.
And his bonus, Mekhi, I was thinking. I totally forgot all about the bonus.
See?
Yeah.
There you are.
All right, whatever.
Well, those Ferraris are not going to buy themselves. Hello?
No, they don't. You know, the Veyron and what's that new hypercar Mercedes are working on? Have you seen that?
I have not.
Well, there's a hypercar with the Mercedes F1 engine in it.
Of course it is. Well, that's what you need in the road. It's an F1 engine.
It doesn't.
Where are you going? Oh, I'm getting some milk, babe. I'm traveling back in time to get some milk. That's how fast I'm gonna go so fast. I'm traveling back. I'm gonna open up a black hole. I'm gonna drive through that black hole, destroying the universe. But I'm gonna get some milk in my new car. That's what I'm gonna do.
This isn't a car show, right? But I don't want to. I just want to laugh about this for a second. So, you know that they use 3 engines a year in racing in F1, and they have to pull the engine down after every race. So that's 300 kilometers. So could you imagine? You'd never get to use your car. You drive it because the first time you drive it, you got to take it back to them. So they got to rebuild the engine again.
There you go.
I'm going to a friend's place on the weekend. Oh, no, you're not. Why not? Because we have to then change all the fluids. You have to pull it down again. Why? Because you just drove it to us to ask us the question. And the engine, an F1 engine, is actually seized. The tolerances are so small, and you've got to actually heat it up to 80 degrees Celsius before you can actually use it. I'm not going to go into it. We're not a car show. So, anyway, has there been any crazy discussions on the internet this week about Area 51? Yes, there has. There's now 500,000 people who have said yes, they're going to take part in the storming of Area 51.
Yeah, I know. That's hilarious. Just on that.
There's enough notice for them to fly all the UFOs out of there. Right?
So I saw a meme, though, on Facebook that said, what, forget Area 51, let's storm the Vatican. Let's storm the Vatican.
Yeah.
Let's storm the Vatican. Because I can get on board with that. I'll be there.
Yeah, well, while everyone's getting shot, you can't imprison 500,000 people in the US without building new prisons, right? Oh, there's a venture for you.
You could, and I know that. Yes, challenge accepted, sir.
All you need, you've seen Life of Brian, right? So all you need is like a whole bunch of crucifixes. There's only 500,000 of them. I'm sure that can't cost that much money, and just let them bake in the sun, in the desert. Yeah, it's midsummer. Yes, they won't last long. You probably wouldn't make it the 20 miles across the valley floor anyway in the baking sun.
Nice. Yeah, my grandfather died in a concentration camp. What happened? He fell off the guard tower. Ooh, too soon. No, this is horrible. I mean, what would you do, right? I mean, but seriously though, this is some crazy stuff we're seeing here. I saw a meme again recently that says, we are living in 1984. We are living in 1984. Mm-hmm. We didn't heed any of the warnings. That's exactly where we are. Mm-hmm. We're living in a world that is entirely insane. It hasn't got any more sane in the last 50 years, in the last 100 years. It's gotten more insane. And every year we're getting more insane. There's like, I mean, I don't even know where to begin with this.
You couldn't shoot, Mickey. No. Mickey, you couldn't shoot. If you were a guard or someone that worked at Area 51 in security, you could not shoot that many people. There's not enough rounds that you could have access to shoot them. And so would you shoot any of them? I'd probably say no. You could only let it happen.
Shoot as many as you can, quickly. Alice will run off scared. Yeah.
Sure they will.
Sure.
Yeah, they'll just run over the top of the dead bodies and no one's going to care. Look, to be honest, I would say that if they haven't already done it, they'd probably just fly them to S4. If you're only going to storm Area 51, good luck with that. I don't believe it's a good idea. Because it's a highly secure military base, and if you're going to do it, then you take on that risk yourself, right? That's just the way that is. But they would clearly, right, all the three-letter agencies would be fully aware of your plan now, because it's been on the news, you know, it's all over Facebook. It would be the hottest topic right now with 500,000 people talking about it.
Yeah, there you go. And well, that's the people. See, that's the people talking about it. I guarantee you, the number of people interested is probably 3, 4, 5 times higher than that, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I would certainly like to see the outcome of it if it was positive towards ufology. But I don't know if you're going to discover anything that's going to be of any worth. And, you know, maybe they'll just build taller fences. Do you think?
Well,
do you think that, Mackie? Do you think the government would you know, cave and then just openly tell everyone? Do you think this might be the pivotal moment where we get disclosure?
So, thank you for asking. so today's show is called the surface versus the below, as in, you know, under the surface is what's below. It's a very deliberate title we've chosen for the show, and it goes to the heart of the question Dave just asked: disclosure, the need for secrecy. And I hope when we explain it, it'll become clear why it might not be as far-fetched as it sounds. I won't go into it here now, but as far as disclosure is concerned, I do believe that we may be nearing a time where it no longer matters. And I mean it this way. If you look at the media today, any media, be it online or consumed traditionally via books, TV, radio, in all the sources of media that we've chosen for ourselves, the theme or the themes have changed significantly over the last 60, 70, 80 years. It is a completely different world. I want to give you a simple example, and then I'm hoping it might find your you might find your relevance here. But if you watched any of the Avengers movies, you might have remembered the first Captain America movie, when he is unfrozen. You know, he was a child of the 40s. So, when he was unfrozen and he looks around, he goes online and he comes back and he says, I'm paraphrasing it. I don't remember the exact dialogue, but he essentially says, I no longer recognize this country. What have you done? Mm-hmm. This is insane. And the country that he was a part of no longer exists, and that's true. By the same token, the countries that existed in the 1940s and 50s now no longer exist either. Any of the countries. I mean, yes, that's right. They're still called the same, but they're very different places. So I think disclosure may have been hard 60, 80 years ago, whatever, 100 years ago, because of the mindset of the people, because of the impact it might have had, because of the place that religion still had for a lot of people. I mean, it still is a powerful force, but it's no longer near as powerful as it once was, especially with all the recent scandals. So I think it's a very different mindscape across the planet. And I think disclosure today would not be as harmful as the people in power would have thought it had been then.
Yeah, patriotism, Mackie, was it was all what's the word? Introspective. Their yes. Country ideals were yes. all about themselves and country centric. Yes. It was about where the country could be, what it could do, and let's show ourselves and our strength against, especially in the late 40s, against the other kinds of political systems in the world. That was the real strength, and the strength was what can we produce and how technically advanced can we compete against the others. And the Cold War really took us through that. But when we fell out the other side to industrialism on a global scale, so what's the term I'm looking for, Mackie? Globalization, right? So yeah. Globalization really changed the way that we looked at ourselves, our country, and our buying habits all changed, and we drove. We're all steering the car. All of us steered our our own countries into this place, and we've been racing each other like on a racetrack. I told you it wasn't a car show. To the same destination.
Yeah.
There are very few. Only those countries, like the small island countries, where they haven't been able to participate in globalization. They're the ones who have remained unchanged to a great extent, especially those who weren't affected by the nuclear tests in the Pacific. But for the most part, the rest of us have all participated in this. And you know what? If Captain America was standing in front of me right now and heard me say this, he would ask why, wouldn't he? Why did you do this? Why did you take your foot off the pedal? Oh, car show. Why did you do this, right? How come you did all these things? Because look where you are. You're all mad, right? We've not held on to those ideals. And Meki, in a similar fashion, if you have someone who leaves their homeland to come to it or to go to another land, they will take their memory as a time capsule from the time they left, and their children will grow up in another country. However, they'll try to perpetuate what their time capsule memories of their origin country are. So whether when I grew up, the people around me were predominantly, gee, you got a really full bladder, predominantly Greek and Italian. I no jumping, right? So Greek and Italians were predominantly near us, and then the mix changed to Chinese, which was great, and we embraced everyone. Multicultural environment we live in. However, the parents were treating the children as though they were still living in that time capsule from their country of origin.
Yeah.
So Captain America, having been unfrozen, was doing the same thing about his own country. Can you see what I'm saying? I hope I made that perfectly clear, right? And it would be completely natural. Say you went to sleep now and woke up in 400 years. You go, what on earth happened, right?
I would be woken up by my cockroach overlords.
Yay! We love the leader.
Leader, yay! No, Dave, you're right. It's populations were more homogeneous, and a lot of change has been introduced. But I do believe that a lot of the things you've just discussed were deliberately undertaken to create a more accepting, a more, if for want of a better word, tolerant society, tolerant to new and strange things. I don't think people. I mean, people would still be. Would they be shocked? No, I don't think they would be shocked if aliens would be walking down the street. Not really, because we've been flooded with images of all manner of creatures and monsters and aliens and whatnot, right? I mean, it's impossible to even remember who they all were. And look at the shows and the popularity of shows like Star Trek.
Yeah.
And and all those wonderful things. It's hugely popular. And then one of the most popular shows today is The Walking Dead, which deals with an apocalyptic scenario where the dead have risen, walk in the streets, and the survivors fighting each other for resources, right? So That's the most popular show on television today. But the point is that it is a different world, and we are a lot more accepting, and our minds are a lot more able to cope with that kind of stuff. I do have my own theory, though, as to why disclosure was not forthcoming then. And it was not, in my opinion, because of the technological superiority of an extraterrestrial species. But I will get into that in the second part of the show.
Awesome. So the thing, and I completely agree with you, and that's why we do this. We do this show because we don't always agree. We do this show because we have common ground, and do you know what's? It's great to have been able to so far work together on all the things we've worked on, Meki. Because you know what, our slight difference in perspective gets us to the same point, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's truly amazing that this happens. One of the things that I think that is, and despite me, and I sort of hate myself for saying this, so just bear with me, that we're on a slow autopilot towards a one world government. It will be natural for us to have a single governing body across the whole planet anyway, but don't hate me on it. Only at the point where we meet another planetary species. Does that make sense then, right? Because at the moment we're all individual players with our own jurisdictional land, and as toothless as the UN is, pretty much, really, are we going to send one of them? And I know there's a job, there's a role who's actually first contact person at the UN, but they're really not a governing body across the planet. So we would need to establish one anyway. I mean, that's just the way it would be. So once we're one planet and there's another one, if we have two planets, then we need a governing body that governs the planets themselves, not just the one planet. And once we start to make some, I sound like a Vogon, but the bureaucracy around that would be insane. We'd have to start to think about maybe local council and skipping state governments. There'd be a whole bunch of things we'd have to change. But certainly we would, at some point in our future, have a government and a currency for Earth. It has to happen. It's just one of those natural evolutions. And I don't want to sound like I'm a proponent to it. I just think that's going to happen. And knowing that it's probably inevitable anyway, is a normal course of any society's growth, then look, I'm not going to resist it. I think it would be a natural thing for us to have. What are your thoughts, Dead Air Man? Throwing it to Meki.
Dead Air Man, yeah. Throwing it to me. No, look, I agree, but as Dave said just earlier as well, it is about having different opinions and coming to very similar points in the reality spectrum, right? As I said last week, any point on the wave function exists. It just happens to collapse into the one that we know and call reality. But all the other points still exist, right? So we can, and scientists now believe we just can't measure them. That's really all it is. They're still there. So, which means, of course, that everybody is right all the time. Okay, don't use that in your argument with your wife, but it is a scientific fact. If all the wave function points are in existence, then everybody is right all the time. We just have different universes where this is the case. No, but it is an interesting conundrum we're finding is in a slow autopilot to one world government. It was an agenda that was pushed quite actively, I thought, after World War II. It was an agenda that was pushed after World War I, but it didn't go anywhere. The League of Nations just was too weak, and Germany, Italy just weren't participating. America was never a part of it in the first place, so it was definitely a European agenda that was being pushed, but not a German or Italian agenda at the time. But after World War II, everything changed, and the world has become used to the fact that America and others have gone around solving everybody's problems. That's not a thing that has been with us for a long time at all. We came from the age of empires, from the age of colonization, and then we went into modernity without any.
You sound like a commercial for a game.
I know, right? Yeah, but we have come into it without any vaccinations, without any clear understanding. I've been listening to a lot of radio programs recently around the enemies of democracy. Mm-hmm. Women have been voting for 100 years. That's it. 100 years, no longer than that. Okay? And in some instances, and not even that long. Right? And in some instances, not at all. Okay, so in some countries, women can't vote because there's no vote to be had, but that's beside the point. So we're on the spectrum of experiences here as far as the world is concerned. And yes, we are on a slow, and I like this phrase, a slow autopilot to a one world government, and with all the failures. See, right now we're seeing a fragmentation, and I expected this fragmentation to happen because people are scared of globalization, they're scared of one world this and one world the other. And it's a natural reaction. The countries have fragmented. The fall of Yugoslavia and the Soviet Union, they fragmented into countries. Other countries are fragmenting. The Sudan is fragmented. Other countries are fragmenting. In our neighborhoods was Timor, East Timor fragmented, right? So it's a whole bunch of stuff that's happening. But by the same token, we're seeing a polarization and a pull, much stronger, in fact, than we saw during the Cold War. And this pull is really around economics, and the camps are shaping up quite clearly. It's no longer a bipolar; it's a multipolar world that can only be governed, though, by potentially a one world government. Now, this one world government, can that be brought about just as a thing that will happen? I think what we will see is a conflict, a fairly significant conflict, and out of that will come the cry for never again, and we can't let this happen again, kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, that also suits the prophecies, Mekki.
I know. But it's human nature, right?
That's right.
We can't help that. We can't help ourselves. No, yeah, we have to examine if that's a bad thing or a good thing. I have no value judgment either way. I'm interested in living peacefully and just doing my own thing. That's what I'm interested in, right? And in fact, there's the Singapore model suits me just fine. I'm against graffiti. I don't understand why people get so upset when they're told, no, you can't graffiti on the wall and you can't put chewing gum, you can't spit chewing gum on the floor.
Yep.
I think that's sensible, right? I think that's sensible. And then, you shouldn't criticize your leader. Well, you can argue about that, but if the leader's doing a good job of keeping you happy, then maybe you should shut up. But look, freedom of expression is important. I get that. But freedom of expression is only important if you have something to say. And I find that as we move through the year, less and less people have anything meaningful to say, and more people are filling up the airwaves, or the digital airwaves, if you will, with completely meaningless garbage. I look online, I look on TV, I look anywhere, wherever I look, there's a mountain of garbage. And once in a while, Dave, you glimpse a pearl, you glimpse something. You're right. But what's the other point you want to make on that?
Oh, I think that look, if it could fix the failings that we currently have, and the biggest failing that I see is the short-term political nature of politics. It just doesn't seem like it's only made until the next election. So there's no real long-term goals, and because it's only short, it's like short-sighted to itself and nothing else. So there's no long game, and the long game is the thing that's missing. And if we had a long game right now, that it would change all of us, and we wouldn't have to bother with the 24-hour news cycle in politics, because that's just ridiculous. It's name calling, and it's mud raking, and it's pointless things to knock other good stories out, right? That's all it is. That's all I see it as.
Yeah.
And in the end, who loses? We do.
Yeah, absolutely. We no longer have, and Dave, you're 100% correct. The single biggest problem we have today is that nobody takes the strategic, the long-term view on anything. I told you the story of Pericles. Athens was in bad shape, some 2,000 years ago, and they said, "Hey, Pericles, we need you to become tyrant for life." He goes, "Nah, I don't want to do it." He goes, "Oh, please help us." He goes, "Nah, not interested." And then they go, "Oh, come on, man." And he goes, "All right, but don't interfere with any of the stuff I'm going to do." And they go, "Okay." So off went Pericles and became absolute tyrant of Athens. Now, tyrant in that era wasn't a bad thing. A tyrant just meant someone who had absolute power. So a tyrant didn't have the negative connotation that we give it today. In any way, the point is, over 30 years in which Pericles ruled over Athens, Athens was blooming. Athens was at the height of its power. He spent money on public works. He improved trade relations. He built a trade fleet. He did a whole bunch of stuff that benefited everybody. Okay? And there was no war while he was in charge. There was nothing. He was just doing the right thing by everybody. And in 30 years, though, right? Singapore, again, one of my favorite examples is a similar situation. When Lee Kuan Yew was still alive, he had a plan. He executed against the plan, and Singapore is looking pretty good. still, even though his successors just don't have what he had. They don't have the vision that he had, and I think in my book they're starting to fail, and
there was
fail fast, which could spell some serious issues for Singapore. But even looking here locally at home, the snowy mountain scheme, other projects, like the GAN, the railway lines that were built in Australia around the world. Or even the work of empire. When the British, you can say what you want about the British, but wherever they went, they built railroads, right? What the Romans ever do for us? Aqueducts. So it's
sanitation.
So you can say what you want. Sanitation. Shut up. But
there's the music, buddy.
Oh, and Monty Python. Go watch it.
Hey, we'll see you on the other side of the short break. Take the time to donate. Take care. You're back with Dave and Mecky's Shiny Side Out. That's where we are. And you're listening to freedomslips.com on the #1 listener-supported talk radio on the net. So push the donate button or subscribe to the archives for only $5.95 a month. I'd like to say hello to all of the new listeners we have out there. We're glad you're on board. So whether you follow, subscribe, or otherwise, thank you, Rectify. We're halfway through show number 300 or 383.
380 on 300. What?
I might have, my German accent's terrible.
Oh, yeah, it is horrible.
It is pretty terrible.
What?
That's all right. Well, it can be.
But my Aussie is fair income. I'm no, that's not true.
that's pretty bad. That was a good example of bad.
Yeah, I meant that. I meant to do that. I told him to do that. Well, yes, and I can only echo what Dave said. Hello and welcome to any new listeners, and of course, thank you very much for tuning in again to our established listenership. A lot of young people, I understand, are listening to us, so that's heartening. That's good. I'm hoping that you guys enjoy this. Just be aware that many things that you learn in school are completely wrong, and other things you've never heard of. And it doesn't mean they're not true. It just means you haven't heard of them. And do your own research. I always encourage that. And Dave is a big believer in doing your own research. Experiences are good because they give you skin in the game, for want of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
But then do the research, understand what it is that happened to you. A lot of people tell me stories, Dave, and that's it. Then they won't have any further involvement with what happened to them.
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes it's fear. It's fear. Not fear. I'm afraid it's fear to be ridiculed. I think it's fear to be made fun of and not taken seriously. You might lose your job. Who knows? Whatever. But fear is a big factor as to why people don't say anything. And people always say, you can't keep that a secret, and you can't keep this a secret, and the other. And no. Yes, you can. You can keep a secret really, really easily.
People can keep secrets really easily and well, and keep them well hidden.
Yeah.
Mickey, you're right. One of the things about people's own experiences is, because I've had my own, and Mickey, I know you've had yours. It's about having to relive it when you tell it. That's one. Two, you're absolutely right about the ridicule. Do you know what? That it's just because other people don't want to believe that it's true. And that can be even in your own case. Maybe you don't want it to change your life so much, but you're willing to, confide in, one of us, maybe, if you're friends of us and you've got, hey, Dave, there's this thing I wanted to tell you about, But don't say who I am, but you're allowed to tell the story of it, but, change my name or whatever. But just don't ask me to tell you about it again. Isn't it? I find that. I find people doing that. Mackie, I've actually got there's 2 new people that I'm friends with that now listen to our show, and they're beginning their own 5G research right now, which is really good.
Oh, okay.
So they're independently going through rather than listening to other people's inherited opinions. And they're going to the actual research and studying the research because they're both university grads. And I'm really pleased that they've begun this journey on their own, Mickey. It's fantastic to see young people wanting to actually know more.
Yeah.
You know, they've looked up from their electronic device and discovered there's a world around them.
Yeah. Yep. No, I completely agree, and it's really nice to see that level of interest, and I think it's a feature of the next generation coming through because they have so much information at their fingertips, and some of it is quite frightening. And I think there might be too much, and because there is too much, people don't know what to make of it, and they look for other explanations, and they want to understand. They really want to understand what's going on because it's going to affect their life. You can already see. You have to be blind not to see it, but you can already see things being different or things changing and your life being affected by things. Again, in the first world, we're lucky we're not that affected, but other nations, there's a massive effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, and just on that, in public opinion, I'm segueing myself here, but just on that, and I want to quickly talk about disclosure and the prevailing attitudes. Well, this is almost 60, 70, even 80 years ago when disclosure could have happened but didn't, and why it didn't. So the commonly accepted stories amongst us, the ufologists community and the conspiracy theorists, is that the powers that be didn't want to tell the people of the Earth that there were extraterrestrial visitors because the knowledge of that would have been catastrophic for us in many ways. You know, you look at any colonizing power, the colonized usually end up at the short end of the stick. No matter where you go in the world, the colonizing powers usually took over and pretty much destroyed the indigenous populations, for the most part. New Zealand being a significant exception here. But was it really like that? Were we the hapless indigenous population falling under the boot of our alien overlords? Maybe. I don't know. However, what about this? And this is a new pet theory of mine, which I've just recently sort of developed in light of a whole bunch of different. But this is a theory, so bear with me while I try to expound some of my thinking, and feel free to interject, Dave. The Earth, as we know it, is populated on the surface. We all know that. That's where we live. Naturally, a lot of creatures and plants live below the ocean, and as well as in the Earth itself. You know, in the bowels of the Earth, earthworms. In fact, earthworms, believe it or not, they've got a huge biomass. I learned recently. Mm-hmm. I was doing some research on this, and it's several billion tons.
It's very large indeed.
In fact, the biomass of earthworms is higher than the biomass of human beings. It's just astounding. Now, having said that, the most of the biomass is on land, with about 15 to 20% in the oceans. I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, but it is a fact, or at least as best as we can tell at this point. Okay, so there we are. We're living on it, but is that really a good place to live? The surface of the place to live. I mean, there's hard radiation, really. I mean, we get sunburned, Dave. Mm-hmm. If you stay out in the sun, you get sunburned. I mean, it's a thing that happens. And I learned that a lot of animals get sunburned too. Mm-hmm. Not all of them, interestingly. A lot of them have fur helping themselves. And out of all the animals, the most interesting defense against sunburn, it came from the hippopotamus. You say, oh, Mickey, what do you mean? Well, the hippopotamus excretes a kind of blood-like liquid. Yeah, it's a natural antibiotic sunscreen. It disperses UVA and UVB radiation. It's got particles in it that does that. And so the hippopotamus doesn't get sunburned. Elephants and other pachyderms usually use dirt and such to keep the sun off their backs. But yeah, so it's interesting. but we do get sunburned, and we are subject to weather, and we're subject to all kinds of things that could fall on our heads from the atmosphere. And generally speaking, it's not really a pleasant place to be out in the open, and that's why we build houses and shelters and all those wonderful things. But we're not built to live out in the world like some animals are. Now on that, simply because we've seen this, there were a lot of underground dwellings in the past. People lived underground. Okay, a lot of people chose to live, especially we found underground cities in Turkey. There's some very impressive ones. So they found that there was a good thing to do. Now, what if we take a slightly different tack here? And I want to go through some of the evidence in the preceding show. Oh, sorry, in the shows that will follow this one. But we've spoken about a whole bunch of stuff on this very same level before. What if we, the humans that live on the surface of the planet, are but a third world nation in comparison to the civilizations that dwell under the ocean or within the earth? The surface, in other words, is the true developing world. So think of us as being, just the slum dwellers on the edges of the true city.
Yeah, makes sense.
The slum, right? The slum dwellers, they can build. They've got the organization. They live their lives. It's not great, but they survive. And in a way, all our accomplishments, I'd like to liken to those slum dwellers, right? And we've had some examples like that as well in the past, with the cargo cults. When we were exposed with high tech of our own making, we still couldn't make head or tail of it. And the American forces that left their planes and hangars and such in the Pacific Ocean, on the islands there, were revered as gods, or at least messengers of the gods, with their superior technology. And again, it's you look it up, we talk about it, it's called the cargo cults. But what if we were that slum? And I'm talking about all of us, the first world nations, all of us. And if you think about it, it's only been really 5, 6, even 7,000 years since we've had anything resembling a civilization, at least that we remember. Okay, we remember, I want to give us 7, if you want to stretch it, I can give us 10,000 years, but that's less clear and a lot darker, and we don't know the details. It's not a long time, though. It's not a long time. And we had to claw our way back from nothing to where we are today. Mm-hmm. What if there were civilizations, or a civilization, but I think it's civilizations, that lived inside the earth, or under the oceans, away from the hard radiation, away from the weather, away from a whole bunch of stuff that could potentially be out of our control, right? In the safe shelter of a much more developed technology and civilization. So because if you don't have all those natural disasters that you have on the surface, hurricanes, tsunamis, tornadoes, hailstorms, heat, bushfires, exactly. Whereas if you lived in the earth, all of those sun-related catastrophes and the weather, you can turn any which way you want. The weather is completely sun-related. You would have a much more peaceful time, and you probably would develop faster because there wouldn't be as many setbacks, potentially. I'm just spitballing it.
Well, I'll add that it just becomes a stable environment. And
Correct.
The threat reduction is so immense that I can only dream, Mekki, if we didn't have the moon, and there weren't tides, and the Earth was perfectly spinning on its axis and wasn't tilted, that you could theoretically just select the latitude that you would like to live at, and the temperature would never change, right?
Correct.
It would be always that. That's exactly what we're talking about, though. If you were to say live under the Earth, inside the Earth, or beneath the ocean.
That is 100% correct. It is that stability that you would really want as a high developed civilization. So what then? And I'm saying this because UFO sightings and USO sightings, so this is unidentified submerged objects as well as unidentified flying objects, have been with us for a very long time indeed. Not only that, Dave, as you well know, they haven't really changed very much in the way they present themselves. Back, 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, when the Athenians and the Persians and the Spartans were fighting on the battlefield, they saw flying shields.
That's right.
Because that's what they saw, right? I mean, they were shining flying shields. I mean, it's the same kind of description we give these objects today. Before they were called UFOs, they were called flying saucers, and before that, they were called discs or such.
Or
it was always
the fiery chariots.
Fiery chariots. It's always whatever is culturally sensible and whatever makes sense for your particular environment. I mean, whatever people will understand where you're from, right? Okay, they're flying shields, they're shining. It makes sense to me. Okay, I know what that looks like. Thank you very much. I know what a flying saucer looks like. Thank you very much. I know what a saucer. It's a round shape. It's thin and flies. I get it. Thank you. But now that the saucer and the UFO have become, in our minds at least, interchangeable terms, and one usually denotes another, even though most of the UFOs that we say, no, not most, but quite a few are no longer or aren't really a saucer shape per se.
That's right.
Be that as it may. Yeah, be that as it may. So what then if in the 1940s, 1930s, and earlier even, and I'll go into the Nazi connection in a second, we realized, and maybe we had realized it before, but we realized it very strongly because maybe something did happen in Roswell in 1947 and something crashed. But it wasn't extraterrestrials that crashed per se, but denizens of our co-inhabiting civilization or civilizations here on Earth. And I will tell you, I'm going to go through a couple of things here why I think that may be a possibility. Whenever we have UFO sightings, most of the time we have anthropomorphic figures, meaning people or personages that have a head, 2 legs, 2 arms, a torso, and similar. Not always, but the vast majority of times. And in some instances, in fact, you could argue that they would be impossible to tell from other human beings, like the Nordics, for example, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so there's obviously an anthropomorphic problem with the alleged ETs.
But because the description of some of them that came from S4 or I think they escaped and went to Vegas. The description of them was you couldn't tell them in the street. You couldn't tell them and that whole issue on its own is and contributes, I think, to Meki's discussion right now.
Yeah,
that if they're
absolutely,
because if you can't tell,
bingo. Yeah, and just to dwell on this point a little, because this is a very important point. Every creature on this planet that has ever lived is contemporary with us now, but is part of our evolutionary journey, if we believe that's a thing, is a brother to us compared to any creature we should encounter out in space.
And you said should. Yes.
Yeah, has to be. Why? Well, let's go with evolution or adaptation here for a second. Let's say it's a thing, and I'm not saying it's not, right? But I do believe there were some interference points. But there it is, right? And I believe evolution is punctuated equilibrium rather than the slow, steady progress. I think it really is I think catastrophic changes within the species have pushed us forward. And make no mistake, our DNA isn't being rewritten as we go along. All the information already exists within our DNA. So whatever change we're making, whatever's happening, what's coming along, all of the DNA sequences that are required for that already exist. Understand that? There's nothing new here. It's all just how you activate it and when it comes into play. Anyway, but if we are now living, and we've said this before, amongst the survivors of many major extinction events. 98% of all creatures that have ever lived from a species perspective are no longer with us. They simply are no longer here. Or if they're here, they're hidden very well. And we are completely randomly, one could think, are the survivors. And what we look like, the way we are Homo sapiens right now, again, you could argue, if you could take the hard scientific argument, it's a complete coincidence. It's complete random that everything is the way it is right now, including ourselves. So if you overlaid it over another planet, unless it had the exact same extinction events and the exact same amino acids coming together, in the primordial, sludge, then everything should have been very different on that particular planet. Maybe copper instead of iron to carry oxygen. Maybe not oxygen. Maybe nitrogen as a carrier in your system. Who knows? Who knows? But the point is that it would be very, very different. Any alien life, any truly alien life we encounter should be very different. Now, there are other arguments here to be made, like the Cedars, the races of the elder races, or even an out of the Earth theory, where the human race or its predecessors have been around for a very long time indeed and have seeded the cosmos. I'm good with all of those, right? And they are actually not running counter with what I'm just about to share with you here. And yeah, you're right. Dave just messaged me and he said, we share 60% of our DNA with the fruit fly. That's exactly correct. That's exactly correct. It's like a really close cousin.
and I think it was 23 or something % with yeast.
Yes.
Right?
Yeast. Yeast.
Just yeast on its own. So you're right. When you said everything on Earth is a brother, like that we're related, that we share DNA, and absolutely in a different environment with a different base structure of DNA, we shouldn't share anything at all with an alien species. There should be no sharing. Yeah. You could only imagine they would look completely different, have, blue, copper blood, whatever. Whatever made life work there should work here. And this was the basis of science fiction, the whole growing life of mine, right? Every alien, everything was completely different, configured in a different way. But if you have a look at our configuration, eyes are in the skull near the brain for nice high processing. We just happen to eat with the same skull configuration, and our auditory system is based so we're able to be a predator. Because predatory, you need all of the facets closest to the processor. Makes sense. Having 2 arms and 2 legs and a spine and standing upright, that to me just seems like it only works in this circumstance. If we swam through an ocean, it may not be the same. If we were lighter than air, it would not be the same. It wouldn't be required. Just to ambulate and get around and be able to manipulate things, 5 fingers? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's 3. Maybe they're all prehensile. Does it make sense? So yeah. the things that we've benefited using to a certain extent, a certain brain size is another one, but I won't go there. Those things make us all related. Back to you.
No, but thank you, Dave. That's exactly right. That's 100% correct. So I want you all to think of that in that light. Now, okay, so anthropomorphic problem. There's a plethora of sightings of USOs. They're not as highly publicized, except for one, which is the Nimitz incident, which I will share with you. Yeah. That's a really good one, actually, Dave. I'm going to mention that. Our DNA shares 50% in common with bananas. Okay, so if you ever feel you're eating your, that's what you're doing. You're eating your cousin. But yeah. So US also or unidentified submerged objects are a thing. Mm-hmm. It's a thing. You see a lot of UFOs near the water and becoming USOs, taking on water, not just near the ocean, but also near lakes, large bodies of water.
Up here,
it also will explain. Yep. Go ahead.
Up here, there was one that was called the Gosford Files. Right. Yeah.
There you go. Exactly right.
I've seen an orange orb that went into the ocean. So it seems.
Exactly,
it seems
right?
to me, Mekki, that the technology that is present to be able to, have anti-gravity also may produce a field around it in which it's then, not affected by any of the physical properties around it any longer, right? So,
correct.
So it could be in zero pressure or insanely crazy pressure. Maybe temperature doesn't go through it either. We don't know.
Yeah. No, but look. I believe that that maybe these UFOs are folded in envelopes of exotic matter, but that's a whole different discussion for another time.
Yeah.
But okay, so so there's a lot of sightings there. So then I want to go back to my original argument, and I want you to understand what I'm saying here. If the human race in the 40s and 50s had found out that we have been co-inhabiting the planet with not one but maybe several civilizations or such that are much more advanced than we are, and they're in fact our cousins or even closer relations, and that we have been living on the surface of the earth like slum dwellers, not knowing what we're doing, trying to get a couple of rocks together, banging them together like crazy. Now, if you can accept that, then I would think that the impact would have been catastrophic on us. If we had found out that we are living on a planet that is already inhabited by people much further advanced than ourselves, that would have destroyed our civilization much quicker and much more assuredly than any alien influence. Because, I mean, if they're extraterrestrials, you can say, well, they're extraterrestrials. What can you do, right? I mean, there they are. But imagine your rich cousin comes to visit. Comes in his Bentley, shows off his watches, and his kids are all wearing Gucci, and you're living in a trailer. You wouldn't feel too good about yourself, would you? Whereas if some strange foreigner from another country came, like a king from Africa or whatever, you can accept that because it's got nothing really to do with you. There's really nothing you can do about that. But this is your cousin who's showing you up here, right?
Oh, I see. So the cultural divide allows an amount of anonymity which you can separate yourselves apart from each other. Absolutely.
Correct.
Agree. Yes.
Now, I want you to think of another thing here, okay? And this is really important to understand. A lot of the UFO sightings, especially in the 40s and 50s, but not just then, but even during World War II, were around military bases. They were around the fighter planes, the famous Foo Fighters, right? They were around the nuclear missile sites. They were around nuclear tests. That's where these UFOs appeared, correct?
Yeah. Why
on earth would I care if I came from Alpha Centauri? Now, the closest solar system to us is I think it's about 3.2 light years.
Okay.
3.2 light years. At near relativistic speeds, it would take you probably 10 to 20 years to get there and another 10 to 20 years to come back. That's how long it would, at near relativistic speeds, assuming that there's no faster than light travel, right? But it's a generation effort. Okay, and further out, the distances become ridiculous when you look at the lifespans of human beings. They just become completely unmanageable. Not only that, but I am a species that has evolved into a spacefaring entity. I can now fly around space from solar system. Why on earth would I bother with someone that has just invented the atomic bomb? Why does that worry me? It wouldn't. Remember the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still? It was actually a great movie. I loved that movie. Klaatu Verata Necto.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. So it doesn't. The movie in itself doesn't make any sense, even if they came from Mars like they did in the movie. To attack Mars from the Earth would be an exercise in futility without even with our presence. So it just wouldn't go anywhere. It's just pointless. But there they were and said, nations of the Earth, we're worried that you're getting too powerful and you can harm your neighbors. No, we couldn't. The only thing that we can conceivably harm is ourselves on this planet, and potentially the moon if you really made a go of it. But all of a sudden, if you stay with my argument for a second of cohabitation of civilizations on this planet, if I were living in the ocean or underground, I would be very interested if a surface-dwelling civilization developed nuclear weapons, because that would have a direct impact on me.
And probably did.
Yes, and probably did. Why did we do all those underground tests, you might ask yourself? Yeah? Atmospheric tests, I get. Above surface tests, I get to some extent. But a lot of those tests were also made in the Pacific. right? The largest body of water that we have here. And a lot of those tests were made underground as well. So there's a whole bunch of stuff here. And there might have been a war being fought, maybe a guerrilla war on our end, because maybe our nuclear weapons are so primitive compared to what the other civilizations can do that they don't really matter. It's more an inconvenience than anything else. But it would make sense why those UFOs would monitor our progress. It makes absolutely no sense if they come from another solar system. None. Zero. It makes zero sense because of the distances involved. It would take thousands of years because we wouldn't send nuclear weapons at near relativistic speeds. That's just completely feasible, right? Not to mention that the intervening space, and this is really, again, Dave, this is where I find we have the flat Earth argument, because people don't understand distances.
No,
yeah?
No, not at all.
Right? But you're right. It could make your other point, though.
So I was going to say that maybe the nukes that we set off affected them because nuclear weapons are cross-dimensional. They would affect all of the matter at that place in every one of those dimensions. That's my belief. And as soon as we started doing that, it's like, whoa, we've got their attention. And because they're the people who live here.
It's possible.
I think they live here. Maybe they can shift and phase in and out, and that was the big problem.
Yeah. But that's the thing. So let's follow that train of thought here. And we come into the cross-dimensional in a second. Again, I go back to the wave function, right? I mean, all the other outcomes still exist. We just can't see them.
That's right.
So we're slightly out of phase. Now, so yeah, all of a sudden, crop circles and
makes sense.
And cow mutilations.
Yes,
makes sense because we know that agriculture and livestock and so forth were taught to us by others. The oldest texts that we have say that we were taught these skills and given these skills by others. Now, scientists will argue, no, we came up with it, and all of the other stuff is just stories. Okay, I'll go with it. But I look at the primary source, and the primary source tells me, no, this was given to me by a god. Okay, that's what the primary source said. So you, Mr. Scientist, what do you have? I've got a few rocks in a vase over here. Well, I'll go with the primary source until I find something better. But all of a sudden, it would make sense that you would come up to the surface once in a while to check on things, as it were, right? I mean, we do this when we have whales, dolphins, or even sea turtles. We tag them. Once in a while we catch them and we check the tags. We look where they're going to. It's just scientific curiosity. And if I share my planet with another I guess society, another civilization on the surface, which is a lot more primitive than mine, I would be the anthropologist that studies them. So the people that come here to and abduct may be anthropologists. They may be scientists. And the only motive they have is really scientific study to see how much our genome has deviated from our original genome, or how related we still are, or how the livestock is doing. And make no mistake, our domesticated animals are vastly different from wild animals. In fact, completely. Our DNA is different. In fact, our DNA is a lot more closely related to domestic livestock DNA than it is to wild animals' DNA. So there's a whole. Go ahead.
Hey, so from the sea turtle's perspective, what did that experience look like? And right, so I'm just swimming along. He's telling his mates afterward, or he or she is telling their mates afterwards, and says, I was just swimming along, and suddenly I was lifted up, and I flew up into the air. And they go, what do you mean the air? Well, the stuff above the water that we live in. Oh yeah, that stuff. How could you fly? I just don't know how it happened. And the next thing I remember, I'm back in the water again, and I've got this tag on my arm.
Yep.
Right?
100%.
Have you ever seen one of those people? I have never seen those people before. I've never heard of them. I've never seen them. But there they were. Oh, you're making stories up. But how did I get this thing in my arm? It's a bit more like my story. And look, that's the thing is from their perspective is our perspective. We see the same thing as sort of like lab rats. I suspect. To a certain degree. Now,
to a certain degree. To a certain degree.
I mean, however, Mekki, you're absolutely right. If it would be more plausible that we're sharing this planet.
Yes. Look, and if you look at the stories that were handed down to us, by previous civilizations now extinct, the god lists, the king lists, there's the ancient stories, the technology that is hidden within the stories, the voice-activated flying machines, voice-activated doors,
yes,
replicators. We are now on the verge of reinventing or rediscovering a whole bunch of this stuff, right? But these stories, they tell us that it was there. Okay, oh no, it's just BS and fantasy and imagination. Look, some of it is, I'm sure, but especially when you've got so many corroborating stories, many stories with the
nuclear weapons, Mickey.
All of them. It's all there, and it doesn't actually run counter to the hypothesis at all. It's just another explanation or a small explanation as to what's going on. And I like these little thought experiments. Now if you take it further, crop circles. Now again, the seeds were given to us by the gods as well. The method of farming, and we spoke about the problem of cities. The answer to the question of cities was agriculture, right? So, and what was the question of cities? The answer to, again, we had to have a large population somewhere to do something, and we think it might be mining gold. Could be something else, but I think it's mining gold. But so everything is a knock-on effect, and I believe possibly that the subterranean or sub-ocean dwellers came to the surface to exploit its resources as well, right? Why not? Of course you would. If it's there, why not? We're thinking about mining the moon, for crying out loud right now. We're mining the bottom of the ocean. But imagine a civilization that is tens of thousands of years ahead of us on this planet, using technology that is just so far ahead of us. Another thing, which is, again, a very interesting data point, is that the UFOs that we're dealing with, and they are unidentified at this point. They haven't really changed much over the last few thousand years, Dave, which to me means they have probably reached a point of technological sufficiency. So what I mean by that is, right now we are living in a society that is used to programmed or built-in obsolescence. What does that mean? What it means is that my grandfather had a bike he owned for 60 years. What it means for me is that I've got a phone that will be out of date in 6 months' time. So if inbuilt obsolescence or redundancy, if you will, is the concept of having to buy something new every 6 months, every year, all the time, something that you expect to break. Now, if you lived in a highly advanced society, like beyond scarcity, they call it sometimes, right, where this economic competition is no longer part of the model, you just build the best thing that you can. And then you make it last as long as you can as well. So you build the best thing, whatever it is, a telephone or a television, and you make sure that it lasts for as long as possible. That is the expression of a highly advanced civilization, making things to last, right? So I have the suspicion that the civilizations that we're sharing this planet with are at that stage, and they are building these things that last forever. And in fact, they probably have reached a point where they don't have to improve them because they are as good as they're going to get unless there's going to be a massive major breakthrough in something. Now, I can't imagine what it'd be because I do believe they're like probably 100, 200, maybe 500,000 years ahead of us. I don't know. But the point is they're way ahead of us. And at this point, they no longer have to make these improvements that we make all the time, and they are probably not driven by economic motives. So all of these things, they're sort of congealing into this whole one thing. And another thing that you have to ask yourself is this. The position of the Earth, and I'm just looking at it from a purely rational and scientifically accepted point of view. I'm not talking about the hypothesis. I'm not talking about quantum mechanics in its wider reaches here. I'm talking about the world and its relative position in the cosmos. We are on the outer arms of a spiral galaxy. Okay? Our galaxy is about 100,000 light years across. There's about 100 billion stars in it. That's our neighborhood. Okay? And yet, there is a bucket load of weird stuff happening here on this planet. A bucket load. Which would make you think, well, we must be special. Right? Possibly. I mean, who knows, right? And then look, Dave, you're right. War is an accelerator of invention and innovation. Imagine you've reached a stage where you no longer need that accelerator. Imagine you've reached a stage where the nature of the universe is no longer a mystery to you, or where you have the theory of everything.
That's
and
right.
maybe those ones, they know the true nature of the prison. Whether or not they can escape it is a different question. And maybe they've gone beyond the point of escape. I don't know. Maybe we've been here too long. Look, I'm completely
Is acceptance
speculating here, but
the
my
last
point is
step, Mickey?
maybe.
Just accept
Maybe.
it? So we just accept what we have?
possibly. I'm not quite there yet, but you're right. It's
Just
possible.
imagine like they're the ancient ones, right? That have been here forever.
Yeah, but I think they have. And look, acceptance, but more so institutionalization. You could no longer function on the outside. You could no longer function in the multiverse. You're stuck here, right? I don't care how advanced you are, how much you can do in this universe. The multiverse is now completely closed off to you because you could no longer function within it. Your institutional universe has become your prison. This reality has become, and that's a terrifying thought, right?
Well, just
and again,
think about this: that our sun is the third or fourth generation star at this location.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you know, maybe it was
Absolutely.
maybe it was a good address, right? Maybe the address is still good. Maybe it's a safe region to live in the
Look,
in the Milky Way galaxy.
in this reality.
And in this reality,
Sure.
and the people who lived in the former planets around the former star just moved away long enough to be able to rebuild again. You know, like a neighborhood, you move back to where you live.
Yeah. Look, yeah, absolutely. But so I hope everybody's still with us now. So how does this other stuff then come into it? So if you look at all the other things that are happening, the Skinwalker Ranch phenomenon, Bigfoot, and similar encounters that always seem to have some kind of strangely other dimensional aspect to it. USO encounters, especially disappearances in national parks as well, which we have done many shows on. But once you take them all in plain sight, if you take all of that together, the argument for a sharing of the planet with a civilization or civilizations much more advanced than ours becomes a lot more feasible, and it becomes a lot more sensible too. Now, and on top of that, we have stories, and there's obviously because corroborating material which we won't be able to get into today. But the show notes comprise. Let me just double check that. I think 21 pages. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 20. So we have significant number of show notes here. We are only on page 1, by the way. This is the preamble and the theory explanation. But essentially, there are stories about the inner Earth, and there are stories about civilizations older than ours. As Gerber has just mentioned in the chat, what about Enki and Enlil? Absolutely. Isn't Nibiru necessarily an outside planet? Why can't Nibiru, and I'm just spitballing here, I don't want to evoke any hate, why can't Nibiru be the inner Earth or under the ocean? I mean, who knows? I don't know. And the moon itself is a whole different question there again as well, right? But certainly Enki, Enlil, Anu, An, all those ancient Sumerian gods and goddesses feature greatly here. Okay, and those inner Earth potentially or under the ocean creatures, beings, cousins, are probably a lot longer lived than we are. They are probably immortal for all intents and purposes, right? And we've touched on that as well, the immortality and how we are denied immortality. And all of a sudden, it becomes a lot more sensible to talk about this. Why would a species coming from another solar system deny us immortality? They wouldn't care too much. Not really, right? But if I'm threatening the status quo on this planet, okay, all of a sudden, the view changes. Oh, no, we can't give these people here too much power. Oh, no, don't make them immortal. Oh, no, don't make them too smart. Oh, no, they shouldn't have one language. Confuse the languages. We need to be able to still control them. Mm-hmm. Okay? And this only makes sense. I know I'm repeating myself. It only makes sense if we are looking at it locally here on this Earth, on this planet. Not even forget the solar system. Just this Earth. So we have these stories. Now we mentioned mutilations, abductions, and seductions. Now, mutilations we've mentioned, abductions and seductions are becoming a lot more sensible because again they played with our genetic material. They interbred with us. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They shortened our lifespan and our life cycles. And why? And how could you possibly interbreed with a creature from another planet? So
That
there are
doesn't
stories.
make sense.
It doesn't, but encounters of the fourth kind and the fifth kind, that's encounters where you have physical contact and really intimate physical contact with these creatures or these people. We have got many stories like that. Yeah, are they slightly different races? Yes, they're described as slightly different races. But I tell you what, I travel a lot, okay, and I travel to areas of the world that not everybody necessarily gets to all the time. And there are some really strange-looking people out there, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but
No.
so we're all used to a certain human type of human being, and that's what we see all the time, and that's fine. I tell you one thing: that the two instances that really stick out for me. I need to share this with you. Once I went to Fiji, and we're there for holiday. It was a wedding, and we were staying in one of the resorts, and one person that worked there, native Fijian. It wasn't a native Fijian Indian, nor was he a native Fijian Islander. Mm-hmm. So he didn't look like either. What he looked like a very dark-skinned a Greek. He had a classical Greek profile with the dark Fijians, right? Mm-hmm. And also a very stocky, muscular build. Not very tall, but very stocky. And if you've been to Greece, you've seen some of those people, very, very strongly built, with strong calf muscles, just overall very strong, but stocky and short physique. Completely incongruent to the rest of his fellows. Another time, I was in Sydney. I was at the Opera House, and I turned around and I took a double take. There was a family, I think maybe a husband, wife, couple of kids, a couple of other people, and they had European hair, and I know, and you need to bear with me here. European hair and Northern European skin. It's a very distinct kind of hair, sort of like a brownie hair, a bit straight, a bit wavy, but definitely German, French, English hair. Right? A German, French, English skin, but completely Chinese features.
Wow.
Okay? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, but if you travel to places like Central Asia, it shouldn't be surprising because that's what people look like there, or Russian Chinese for that matter, or people in Kamchatka, right? So my point is that yes, there will be racial variations. Of course there are, and certainly if they're inner Earth dwellers or bottom of the ocean dwellers, there will be. But they're still the same species. They can interbreed with us. I will put my bottom dollar on it that there's not a single alien species in the universe, yeah, unless there was a cedar or we're somehow related from way back that we can interbreed with. If you come up two different or separate evolutionary trees, there is no way that you can interbreed. It cannot happen.
That's right.
It's an impossibility.
I'm going to make a point here to bolster this argument. Dogs can interbreed with each other. We all know that, and that's just the way that is, despite the fact that they're so incredibly different looking. They can be the tallest dog, the smallest dog, the fluffiest dog, the shortest fur, no fur. They can have... their nose can be long or short. It makes no difference. Now, I was once told by a geneticist, Meki, that all of the humans on the planet are so identical that it's useless to say different races. We're just the same. We are the same. Yeah, we have different appearances, but just like the dog example I gave you, they gave me the same example. That we are one species. We're all one, and race is just a way for us to describe ourselves, right? Because remember, people love to put a label on something and say, yeah, there you go, right? So in dogs, we call it breeds. They're just different breeds. They're still dogs. They're still the same, and they can still breed with each other. We should be called breeds. We're just a different breed, right? Does it make sense? So I think, and I support Meki's argument here, that there should be no way that we could, logically, without there being, and I'm agreeing with you, a seeding race that just put people everywhere throughout the universe, like we could in 75 million years, so we gave an example last week, unless if they didn't exist, then it would be impossible. Completely impossible. We would not have anything similar at all.
No, I agree. Absolutely, nothing. In fact, the only science fiction story that ever took account of that was What Mad Universe by Fred Brown. If you haven't read it, I urge you, Dave. I'll bring it in.
Awesome.
In this week. I'll bring it in. Dave and I share a workplace these days. By Fred Brown. So what it is, it's about a guy that for all intents and purposes, is dimensional traveler. But he travels to a dimension where they have space travel. But when he encounters an alien from another solar system, so the aliens he encounters from the moon and from Mars, and they're all very similar because you can argue that they all followed similar evolutionary traits because there was seeding from the Earth and all that. But all they're not as horrible as you might expect. But then the creature he encounters, and I think it's from Arcturus, is the story, is the way he describes it is beautiful. His brain couldn't comprehend it. The only thing that he realized or could really taste more than comprehend or feel was the utter alienness of the creature that he was looking at.
Wow.
He was like a captured prisoner of the Arcturian. There was no common ground except for the venomous desire to destroy each other. There was zero common ground, and that's probably the best way. And Fred Brown had a real good insight there as what it would be like to truly meet an extraterrestrial from another solar system. I'm not saying it has to be that way. What I'm saying though is there's no common ground between us. It can't be unless there's a common seeding event at some time in the past. And I know we're running out of time. Look, we've only made it past my introduction. But crop circles would fall in the same category because crop circles, again, you would go and check on it. There's a difference between the actual crop circle phenomenon and crop circles that are created by human beings. Look it up. They're not the same thing. Crop circles that are the real thing continue to grow. They weren't trampled down. They were persuaded to the ground, slightly bent, whereas people-made crop circles are trampled down and broken. That is the difference here. So it would make sense. All of this would make sense if there were a sharing of this planet with civilizations that are ahead of us and have been here for a long time indeed. And in fact, they're very instrumental in our creation and I guess guidance of our culture, right? It makes that makes sense. So again, it's just one of my pet theories. I sprang this on Dave a little, but he's been a good sport. Rolling with the punches.
No. I completely get it. It's such.
Good.
The I have to say the angle or the slant that you've come to this with, I completely support. And look, I just want to say, while I've got the talking stick, there's only 4 minutes left. I just want to say that an hour ago, at the top of the hour, we had a 6.5 magnitude quake off northwestern Western Australia. And it was felt by... it's a very sparsely populated area up there, but it was felt on land. And there's only reports coming through very slowly. But I don't believe there's no major town or city. There's no city there. There's towns, but they're usually large ranches with millions of hectares of land. So very sparsely populated, and we'll see what happens from that. But it's part of this. The planet is going crazy with earthquakes. It's the only reason I mentioned it. Sorry, and back to you, Mekki.
No. Look, thank you. This is hot off the press. 6.5 on the Richter, right? That's actually significant. So, we'll see what happens there. But again, this increased earthquake activity. Now, have you thought about it this way? This just came to me. What if they were using earthquakes as their weapons of offense against any trespasses we might commit?
Oh yeah,
it would make sense.
Shake
I guess
our little shanty towns, because imagine we would look like a shanty town in comparison with our.
You would.
Yeah, complete. I've seen miles to miles to miles of shanty towns, and I know what it means. And you can imagine, Mekki, our first world perspective of a shanty town is that they don't have any way of escaping it. They don't seem like keen on making changes to make it better. Is that the kind of thing?
Right.
Think about
100%.
Yeah. A second
100%.
A species on this planet sharing it with us, cohabitating, looking at what we're building, going, oh, really, it's really not going very well, is it?
No, think about this. It doesn't make any sense why the moon program stopped. Why we didn't go to space anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we had gone there, they let us go. Maybe they missed it. I mean, who knows, right? Maybe they did actually miss that we were going to the moon, and then we went there, right? And then they said, oh no, you can't be here. I mean, back to your shanty town. This is not for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying this is what it is, but I'm saying though is it does make a lot of sense to look at it from that point of view. Well, yeah. Oh, Earth people not allowed on the moon. Thank you very much. So, I mean, who knows? I mean, it's a crazy world out there. But thank you everybody for sticking with us and for another crazy theory that we have come up with.
Tinfoil hat zone, by the way. Don't be alarmed.
That's right.
Look. We come up with these ideas, we propagate them, we talk about them, we get conversations happening, and that's what we do.
That's the thing. Donate if you can. This is Listener Funded Radio. I don't think we've mentioned it enough today. Click through the sponsored links on the website as well. The chat room is in a new location. It's actually pretty funky, I have to say, and it's easy for me to get in now. And if we do talk over the music, I'm sorry, but that's Microsoft's fault. It's all Microsoft. It's got nothing to do with us. It's all Microsoft. And if you can spend some money. Dave said it's quite cheap. The cost of a coffee for the archives. Or maybe just donate some cash. That's also good. Because all the content here is gratis for free. It costs you nothing. Chat room is in a new location. I should play music. Right?
Almost. The music's nearly there. Look, stay tuned for a round table with Jer Bear coming up. I can see he's in the chat. Welcome to this period of the weekend, and enjoy his smooth tunes that he plays. He likes to play a bunch of those. I can hear the music now playing, guys. Enjoy what's left of the weekend, and we'll catch you next week. See you, everyone.